All right. Welcome back to another episode of SaaS Buyers Club. I'm your host, Omeed, and I'm the managing partner of Optimist Legal. Optimist Legal is a full service corporate boutique law firm where we help SaaS founders with all things contracts, from incorporation to exit. We help founders start their businesses. We help them draft master services agreements, terms of service, privacy policies. We help with venture fundraisers and finally exits. So pretty much anything from incorporation to exit that has to do with contracts, that's what we work on. In addition to being managing partner of the law firm Optimist Legal, I also am the host of the SaaS Buyers Club, which you're watching right now. I believe that anyone that has value to offer to SaaS founders will help SaaS founders with increasing the exit values of their business. So the mission of SaaS Buyers Club is to help SaaS founders get the best exit possible. So with that being said, I'm pleased to introduce Lucas Lovell, who is the VP of Product at Paddle.
Thanks, Omeed. Very happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. So why don't we just actually start. Tell me a little bit about Paddle and how you became VP of Product at Paddle.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, Paddle is an end-to-end billing and payments platform that works with software companies all around the world. We enable software companies and SaaS companies to capture revenue globally around the world, process their payments for them. We do that under a merchant of record model, which means from a technical or legal perspective, we are operating as a reseller, and that gives us a unique set of advantages in terms of how we can support our customers to sell around the world in a compliant manner. So Paddle is a London-founded company. I'm London-based. I am here in London. I've been in the company for about 4 years now. My experience prior to Paddle was actually in SaaS. So I was the founder of a SaaS company and worked on that for 4 or 5 years. Lots of stories in that realm, but when I joined Paddle, I sort of jumped over the fence onto the fintech and payment side. I now serve SaaS founders and SaaS companies and help them with their billing and payments all around the world. So yeah, been in the company 4 years, love the company, work with SaaS founders all around the world. Initially started out as a product manager and then more recently moved into sort of a more operational product leadership role.
Awesome. Love that. Lots of good stuff in there to chat about. So what do you want SaaS founders to get from the episode today?
Yeah, I was reflecting on this, and I think the main thing that I would love a SaaS founder to walk away knowing is that your payments partner, your billing and payments partner, can really be a growth lever for your business. And I think most founders of software companies underestimate the role that their payments platform and payments product and payments partner plays in the trajectory of the company. I think payments platforms can help companies become very successful. I think they have more levers for growth inside of them than most people perceive and think they do. At the same time, they can also be a headwind to growth and definitely cause challenges and problems in the event of an exit. So I think to sum that up and to play that back, I think it's very much like most founders view payments as something operational, as like, I need something to capture revenue. And it's very much, you're my operational partner and you enable me to capture revenue. But I would like them to think of their payments partner as a growth partner. You're a partner and a product that can really help me get the most out of my business. I think that's the core message from us.
All right, let's break that down. So you're like, Paddle is not just, a merchant payment platform where so much more we can actually like contribute to your growth rather than, be a way that you just capture revenue.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you do that?
Well, when you think about growth, right, you think about the 3 ways that you can grow your company. And this is pretty well documented, but thinking about acquisition, monetization, and retention, right? You grow your customer base, you make more money from your customer base, and you make sure you don't lose your customers. It's a pretty simple way of thinking about how to grow my business. So what I'll do is I'll sort of rally off a few things that your payments platform can do and that Paddle can do, but other payments platforms do as well, that can help you across each of those sort of core components of growth. So when you think about acquiring net new customers, if you're deploying a PLG motion, which is quite a common motion in SaaS, so you're embedding a checkout-based experience on your website and enabling your buyers to self-serve onto your product, that checkout experience needs to convert, right? And there are lots and lots of things that make that checkout experience convert. Firstly, it has to be a good checkout. It has to meet modern buying expectations in UX. Secondly, you need to be presenting that checkout in a currency that's going to resonate with the buyer. You need to be offering the right payment methods at checkout, right, that a buyer wants to pay with. All of these things, they add up to your net checkout conversion rate, right? And your net checkout conversion rate can move by multiple percentage points based on all of those things. So when you're running a SaaS company at scale, right, you can be leaving 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% of growth on the table just through your checkout experience, right? That's one example.
Okay.
You also want to think about things like payment authorization and payment acceptance. So is your payments partner the right payments partner for where you're selling into? What markets and geographies are you selling into? Payments platforms perform very differently based on where they're located. And there are lots of examples of that. That's another one. Pricing is a really important growth lever. Your ability to be flexible on price is very much based on whether your payments platform allows for that flexibility. So for example, can you price based on region? Lots of payments platforms might enable you to price based on currency, but that means that you're deploying one price in euros across the whole Eurozone, meaning that you're unable to adjust your pricing based on willingness to pay. So that's another example of how pricing is another important component of growth, and again, is reliant on your payments partner. So there's 2 or 3 examples just through the lens of acquisition, right? Just through the lens of like acquiring net new customers. And then you think about monetization as well. So how are you sort of making more money from those customers once they're on board with you? And you think about things like billing flexibility that enables you to do effective cross-selling and upselling. Again, a lot of those levers exist within your end-to-end billing and payment system. Again, you think about payment authorization on renewals, right? Also going to help you monetize more effectively. And then if you think about retaining customers, right? Of course, the best way to retain a customer is to have a great product and to make sure that they're realizing the value of your product. But another role that payments platforms typically play is the role of capturing revenue, right? So recovering failed payments. And, we think about the world through the lens of like churn and involuntary churn and voluntary churn. Voluntary churn is tough to capture, but involuntary churn is churn that shouldn't have happened in the first place, which is like, I love your product. I think it's great. My card just happened to expire at the wrong time and I've lost access. So how can you make sure that you're deploying the right tooling to make sure you're capturing that revenue and recovering that lost revenue? So you start to add all that up, right? You start to add all that up across like
a lot of variables,
acquisition, monetization, and retention. And you go, okay, have I gone and thought really deeply about my implementation of that tooling such that I'm getting the most out of what I'm doing with my business? And I'll pause there, but that's the core message.
Okay, got it. Yeah, a lot of different things to dig in there. And the main point that you concluded with was, am I thinking about the implementation of the payments platform the right way? Because there are all these different variables, these different levers that can be pulled essentially, whether it's UX, whether it's, in the currency, whether it's by region, whether, all these other variables that you had mentioned. So walk me through like how you would help a SaaS founder understand, like give me some examples of how you've helped SaaS founders pull these different levers.
Sure. So I think it depends on size and scale. And I think the approach that we take is different based on the maturity of the company. We've worked with some much larger companies that might have built a lot of their billing system in-house natively, and they're very much constrained by something that was built 5 or 6 years ago. I won't name names, but I know household SaaS companies that are only billing in USD globally because they're constrained by their billing logic, right? Now, I know based on the data that we collect for thousands of software companies that if you're billing in AUD in Australia and GBP in the UK, your conversion rates are going much higher, right? So the first thing is like establishing, I think, where is that company at on their journey, right? What are the current constraints that they're facing, and how can we help them alleviate some of them and unlock more growth through sort of better implementation of payments? I think that's one piece. The second piece, I think, which somewhat applies more for earlier stage SaaS, is thinking about their ambition. So what is your ambition as a SaaS company? We tend to think about software and SaaS being global from day one. We use that phrase quite a lot. Supporting their sort of understanding and learning journey around what it takes to expand into new markets, right? I think, there's a lot of talk and lots of companies understand, the idea that I need to have a checkout that can be deployed in a certain market and having a product that's built and can work in that particular market. But then what we do with them then is go, okay, well, if you want to be really successful in China, right, you need to be deploying Alipay as a payment method, right? Because the majority of the Chinese market prefer to pay with Alipay. Now, the way we sort of approach that conversation is very much like an education process around, if you're in the UK or Australia or the US, it's very credit card dominant countries, right? A lot of the Western world and the English speaking world is dominated by card networks, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, etc. But countries like China, very, very low adoption of those sorts of rails. Brazil was another great example. Fast growing e-commerce industry in Brazil. They have very high adoption of local payment methods. The local payment method in Brazil is called Pix. Yeah. So if your ambition is to expand into Brazil, we're going to talk to you about what are the different things that you need to think about to be successful in Brazil to make sure that you're capturing payments and localizing your offering most effectively.
Interesting.
And we do that through data as well. We look at different conversion rates based on different implementation types, and make sure that we're supporting our customers to get the most out of power.
I love when I go to purchase something online and I can use Apple Pay.
Spot on.
I literally rejoice. I'm like, oh, I only have to click one button. I don't have to get my credit card out. And I can't remember, my security code. Was it like this 3-digit number? Because I have so many cards. Or was it that 3-digit number? Like if I can just one click purchase with Apple Pay, I'm like, whoo, so easy. Love it.
Totally.
I mean, I won't turn off if I can't. Well, it also just depends. It's like, okay, how bad do I really want to purchase this product?
Exactly. And that's where we think about the concept of buying intent a lot as well. So if you're the sort of company that is deploying a product that has a buyer that might be introduced to the product with low buying intent, Apple Pay is super important because people aren't going to bother getting out their cards. Right now, if you're more of an enterprise, or let's say you're a B2B SaaS company where you're selling to businesses, right? Buying intent is probably a little bit higher. If I want to buy Slack for my team of 12 people, I'm probably going to buy Slack irrespective of whether there's an Apple Pay button or whether it's just a card field. That really matters as well. And these are the sorts of conversations that we have with SaaS founders around how can you leverage your payments platform.
Okay, so that's a great point in terms of market appropriateness of how to enable checkout conversion, right? So that's what you just pointed out. In China, you want to use Alipay. In Brazil, you want to use Pix. And, these are different advices that you give to SaaS founders. What are some other conversations that you're often having with SaaS founders?
Yeah, great question. I think growth is a really important part of it. We've sort of touched on that. We're also having a lot of conversations with SaaS founders around compliance. So liabilities, sales tax, and compliance. And I think if you think about the pain of influence or the surface area of a payments product, right? When you're thinking about a liquidity event, you have the growth angle, which we just touched on. I think there's a data component, so data reliability is an important part as well. And I think the last two are very much centered around liabilities and sales tax. So making sure that you're all buttoned up from a sales tax perspective and making sure that you're selling compliantly all over the world, right? And because payments and finance and revenue capture is riddled with compliance and regulation. That is quite, that varies around the world. I can give you some great examples of that. And I think when companies are sort of approaching some sort of liquidity event or maturing in a way, and it doesn't have to be a liquidity event, by the way, it can be anything. Now, we have lots of conversations around, I want to expand into the EU or I want to expand into this country. I Google it and I see all these articles about law this, regulation that, and I need you to help me walk through that. And how can you best support me? So that's the other part of it. That's big, I think.
Okay. And how do you help? What does it look like for you to actually support these companies in the expansion outside of understanding, optimization of checkout conversion?
Yeah. So Paddle is a merchant of record. The main value proposition of Paddle, right, is that as a merchant of record, we take the full liability for the transaction. So this is why we're very popular with high growth, ambitious SaaS companies who want to go and expand around the world without the additional overhead and compliance burden and sales tax burden of doing so. So our model as a merchant of record is that we are registered in all jurisdictions around the world, and we operate as the principal of the transaction, and therefore we calculate sales tax, and then we remit the sales tax before we pay our customers out, right? So it means that you can sell around the world and not worry about it. It's our job to stay compliant, right? It's our job to make sure that we're adhering to local laws and regulations and changes in those things, so you can sell around the world hassle-free, right? That value prop, by the way, is probably the thing that differentiates Paddle from like a
Definitely.
Stripe, for example, right? Like a Stripe doesn't operate under a merchant of record.
You beat me to the punch.
Yeah, exactly.
That was going to be one of my questions. I was going to be like, well, why Paddle versus Stripe? There you go.
Well, so we win a lot of customers from Stripe, right? Stripe are an amazing company, one of the most successful tech companies ever. And I will say that every day, right?
Yeah, but people are getting upset with Stripe because of like all the holdbacks and, things like that, like holding, tens of thousands of dollars from, various different companies. We see it a lot in the e-com space. I don't necessarily see it that much in the SaaS space necessarily, but for sure, like.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think like the whole area around sales tax and compliance, it's just a common area of ignorance for a SaaS founder. Like if I'm running a SaaS company, I don't want to be waking up thinking about like, have I calculated the right amount of sales tax in France? I want to think about how can I make my product better? How can I support my customers and make sure that they're receiving value from the product? And how am I supporting the team that is, blood, sweat, and tears building a thing and supporting our customers? I don't want to be thinking about sales tax calculations and sales tax remittance all over the world. It's almost like you think of growth, the conversation we had before, as a thing that can push you, right? Thing that can make you more successful, give you those percentage points in growth that you may not have had otherwise. But you think of like compliance and sales tax as like a headwind. It's a thing that stops you being successful. It's a thing that like pushes you back a little bit, right? So sales tax is one, but there are others as well. Like I can give you some examples. Consumer protection law around the world is getting much stricter. Yeah. There are states in the US that are leading on this. The EU is doing a lot in this, like California in the US.
One-click cancel.
All that sort of stuff, right?
Yep.
It's a lot to keep up with, right? And in the US, it's at a state level. In the EU, it's at a country level. And then you throw in all the other countries around the world as well. So like click to cancel, FTC, US, simplified cancellation process, now in law. Yeah. You got to adhere to that. Now, lots of other states have what we call pre-billing requirements. So if you have renewals that are running at like an annual cycle, right? People have subscription fatigue. As consumers who have subscription fatigue, everything is like on a subscription now. So the governments are saying, well, you have to send reminders now before you're going to renew and charge that person again. And we're going to make that a law, right? And then you have like, okay, this isn't like one state gets 14 days before renewal. Another state's 30 days before renewal. In Germany, it's something different. In France, it's something different, right? So how do you stay on top of all of that? That's another example of how the payments platform needs to support you staying compliant and selling around the world successfully.
And how do you does the platform itself like track those compliance measures and like implements them? Like there's like email flows like built into Paddle, for example. Oh, that's fascinating. Is that the case?
Yeah. So all that logic is built into Paddle, and we have compliance teams here at Paddle who are doing all of that. So the 3,000 customers that use Paddle don't have to do that, right? So like we do it once and it applies to all of our customers. So you inherit it by using the product.
Got it. Okay. What else?
I'd say growth, as we spoke about, and compliance are probably the two biggest things, I'd say. And I think under compliance, we're sales tax and we've got billing notifications and consumer protection. The other one that I think is interesting is the importance of data, right? data access, like access to the right data, and then also data accuracy and reliability. I'll frame it like this, right? As a payments platform, we see your revenue before you do. Yeah. Like the money comes to us. And this is the same, irrespective of whether you're with sort of Paddle or Stripe, right? As companies, we pay our customers out. Like once you receive the funds, we'll pay you out on a cadence. Yeah. So all of your revenue data is sort of contingent on your payments platform, right? Because usually most customers are taking Paddle data and then piping it into their workflows. Like they might be piping it into NetSuite or piping it into a BI tool to sort of track revenue, right? So that data needs to be good, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be accurate, it needs to be reliable, because the numbers are the lifeblood of the business, the revenue is the lifeblood of business. Having a payments platform that you can trust has data that's accurate and reliable is super important, right? And I think, due diligence, when you get to it, if we're talking in the context of an exit, can uncover accounting errors. This isn't my wheelhouse, but like can uncover a lot of errors in sort of financial records.
Sure.
We work with a lot of companies on revenue recognition, for example, right? So are you calculating and doing rev rec properly? Again, it's something that early stage SaaS founders typically ignore. You probably can get away with it early stage, right? But as you start to evolve and get more mature and bigger, you definitely need to be thinking about revenue recognition and making sure that like we, Paddle or whoever your payments partner is delivering your data in a way that enables you to do your books in the right way is super critical. And then I think there's another lens to this, which is the difference between performance data and financial data, right? I think performance, and the way I think about this is very much through the lens of the consumer or the persona. So I think of performance data when we're building all of our metrics and analytics tools, right? From a performance perspective, how is your company going? What's your MRR? What's your NRR? What's your churn rate? What's your LTV? Where's your CAC at, right? I'm very much thinking of more of a CEO persona who wants to just understand business health. And then on the financial data side, you're thinking more of a CFO persona who wants the raw data, the raw numbers, transaction line items, pipe it into here, make sure it all reconciles and matches. And those two threads are both important, right? So I think a lot of SaaS founders, early doors, they focus on performance data because that's the part that's telling them whether their business is doing well. And then when they get to an exit, they go, oh shit, I need to get my financial data sorted. Like I hadn't really thought about, are all my ducks in a row from like a financial records perspective? So yeah, it's critical.
Spoiler alert, they never are.
Exactly, right? So financial data suddenly becomes critical based on some other, there's usually a catalyst, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I've hired quite a seasoned CFO because I'm ready for that. Or it might be like I'm raising a bunch of money, or I'm gonna sell my company, and it's like, oh god, I need to get that in order, right? And it hasn't been a focus beforehand, but it is a focus now. Whereas I think performance data typically is always a focus throughout the life cycle of the company, and we see lots of companies sort of realize that they're a little bit behind in this regard and start chasing tail.
Okay, so talk to me about the platform itself and how the platform functions with respect to these things that you've mentioned, specifically on the data piece. How does it differ from other platforms in terms of ensuring that SaaS founders have the reliable, accurate data?
Yeah.
And what does the actual data collection and data display look like on the Paddle platform?
Sure. So I think I sort of alluded to this just then, but we very much think about the provision of data through the lens of financial data and through like insight-based data. So how can we give you data that is going to help you generate insight better, right? To help you understand your company. What are the things you need to know?
So you think about it from like the CEO perspective.
Yeah. So we have a product called Metrics. You might have heard of Profitwell. Profitwell is a company that Paddle acquired a couple of years back, and they had sort of best in class SaaS metrics, and that now works natively with Paddle, not quite natively, but very close to works with Paddle. And so Profitwell gives you all sorts of stuff across MRR, churn, ARR, LTV, all the classic SaaS metrics, NRR, cohort analysis, segmentation, being able to drill down into sort of segmentation based on geography, based on different cohorts of customers, et cetera, et cetera. And that is a really powerful tool to understand the health of your company. And that's available with Paddle. So you get that out of the box, right? You create you create a Paddle account, you have a metrics account. As soon as you plug Paddle in and you implement Paddle, or you're using Paddle to capture payments, all of that data just flows through seamlessly. You open the dashboard and you see all your numbers there. You can sort of gauge how your business is performing. Really useful from sort of a performance and business health perspective. We then have what you probably call financial reporting, which is less about displaying you one MRR figure and giving you all the data that went into that figure. So it's like, if you want to give me a transaction report, show me every single transaction in a given time period.
Like a balance sheet,
exactly.
So on and so forth.
All that sort of stuff. So you're downloading reports and you can access.
So it's almost like QuickBooks built into Paddle.
I probably wouldn't go that far. I think that would probably be a little bit misleading, because it's not an accounting platform. But what it will do is give the data that you can feed into an accounting platform. So if you're using QuickBooks or Xero, or you're using NetSuite, right? Our APIs will just pass all the data in there. Like, you don't, and most of our customers will set that up, right? When they join Paddle. So that data, getting all the transactional sort of line item level data in the right format, and then we'll also do things like payout reports, where, like, when we pay you out, we'll tell you how much money you made and all the different, like, all the fees that Paddle took along the way, and like FX stuff, like how we calculated foreign exchange rates, all that sort of stuff. So basically, like, all of the underpinning raw data that you need access to in order to run your company. And you can access that through APIs. So just by calling our APIs and piping that directly into an accounting platform of sorts, or you can download reports. Like, we have lots of customers just download CSVs and get the raw files and manipulate and go about their business. So I think it's really, like, for us, it's about, and again, like, Paddle isn't a perfect platform, but by no means. We're still evolving and getting better and providing more for our customers. But data accessibility is a big theme for us, like making sure that we're giving the amount of data that our customers desire, and then also performance data. And there might be one more, which is, we're not really there yet as a company, to be very candid, but it's more around benchmarking data. So how can we help you better understand, like, we're giving you this figure. Is that figure good, or is that figure not so good? Or how can I be doing better? Is there more upside? Is there not much more upside? Like, am I maxed out on checkout conversion? Like, what do I have much more to play with from a checkout conversion perspective, or do I not? And I think we're still maturing in that space, and that's something that we're really interested in moving forward.
Let's drill into that a little bit. Like, it sounds like you have some good insight to share on the benchmarking piece in terms of, maxing out on conversions and so on and so forth. How do SaaS founders, what do SaaS founders need to know about that you could potentially share with them that would be valuable?
So we have something called the SaaS Index that we publish, which basically aggregates data from all of our 3,500 customers around the world. And it's actually a lot more than that if you use metrics. So you can use our metrics product without using Paddle. So actually, like, powering metrics, we have more like 20, 25, 30,000 customers who we're seeing all their data. So you can use metrics with Stripe if you wanted to. The offering with Paddle is better, but you still can. So we have a lot of data on the performance of software companies around the world that we're sitting on. Everything from sort of growth rates, basically, like are you growing at the mean or the median? Are you above or below for a particular segment or type of customer? That's really interesting. Sometimes SaaS companies might get dips in growth, and they might think, what am I doing wrong? And the SaaS index might be able to be, there's actually been a global dip in growth because of the macro, and that's useful information to have, and you can sort of benchmark yourself whether your growth has dipped more or less than other companies that are similar in size and stage and type to you. I think that's interesting. I think things like payment acceptance are really interesting as well. So payment acceptance around the world varies massively, and there are lots of inputs into payment acceptance. And you might have a SaaS company that has global payment acceptance at 76%. And you might have another SaaS company that's at 66%, and you sort of want to sort of benchmark where are you at against other companies. Checkout conversion is a good example as well. So I think checkout conversion is a really good sort of barometer for like your buying experience. Like, when customers land on your sort of payment flow, are they going all the way through the payment flow and succeeding?
What's the average checkout experience conversion rate that you would say? I don't want to put you on the spot in terms of metrics, but
yeah, it's not really a metric that, I mean, you have to drill down into sort of size and type and stage of company, because like there are so many variables, and that's the tough thing with this data, is that there are so many variables, right? So I don't have a number off the top of my head.
That's okay.
We think more about movements in checkout conversion than aggregate numbers. So like your checkout conversion was 24%, and by turning on thing X, or by localizing currency, or by offering payment acceptance, we've seen a 10% increase. Like we had a company who were selling into China, to give you an example, and their revenue in China went up by 9x just by deploying Alipay as a payment method. Their Chinese revenue went up by 9x. And that's because Chinese buyers were landing on their website and going, oh, you don't take Alipay, not interested, and falling off or dropping off the buying experience. And as soon as you provide the local payment method, conversion through the buying experience or conversion through the checkout goes up. That's a lot more money for you. So I'm using a revenue data point, but it's because of the checkout conversion that their revenue volume increased by 9x.
Yeah, I mean, 9x is not a small amount of increase. I think, that's an example where if you meet the market with what the market is looking for, you can, get exponential results. And you could think that maybe the market wasn't working for you, and then you tweak or adjust, something as simple as, just using the payment experience that people are looking for, and all of a sudden the market works for you. So people could want the product, but it's just that you're not, creating the channel for them to get the product the way that they want to.
Yeah, and another good example is so South Korea is another good example. We deployed some functionality in South Korea early this year, where we offered a South Korean payment method offering. And since then, I'll throw some numbers at you that I've got. Increase in checkout conversion across all the customers who are now using those South Korean payment methods has gone up by between 2 and 8%. And buyer adoption, which is really interesting, is now at 70%. And that means that 70% of South Korean buyers are now choosing to use those payment methods that are specific to South Korea. And the other metric to throw in there is that auth rates have increased by about 20%, which is like, if you the rate of authorization of that payment, i.e., when you hit pay and it goes payment succeeded or payment failed, succeeded, that's basically your auth rate, has gone up by 20%. So you can see like the upside is huge if you do it right and if you deploy this stuff in the right way.
Fascinating. What other stories, like case study stories, do you have for me about how Paddle has been a facilitator of growth for various SaaS companies?
We have, trying to think off the top of my head, I've definitely got like examples. I can't throw figures at you off the top of my head, but I've got some examples of companies who have deployed our retention software, which we haven't really spoken about yet, to help them capture lost revenue. So,
you have a churn prevention
built
into Paddle as well. It sounds like you do everything.
Yeah, we do a lot. It's a bit, the surface area of the product is quite big, but it's great. So there's a company that uses Paddle that we recently did a case study with. You can find it on the website. If you go to our website, we have lots of case studies. Who increased their retention rate by 25% just through capturing payment, like through payment recovery, basically, through failed payments that they were in that, like our system will retry failed payments intelligently, which is super interesting. And you'd be blown away by how many payments you capture thereafter. There's so many reasons why a payment can fail, right? And, insufficient funds is one decline code, but there are so many decline codes. Sometimes the banks just decide, not taking that payment for a reason that is even unknown to us as a payments platform. So it's a bit of a black box. And And it's really important to retry payments at a renewal period. So the tool that we have helps or does that on behalf of our customers and retries those payments.
Mm-hmm.
We also have things like cancellation flows. So the product is called Retain, and you can use Retain to deploy cancellation flows that are best in class cancellation flows. So if you have a cancel button in your app, which you should, because you have to, you can trigger a cancellation flow. We have salvage offers, or things like term optimization, which is basically using data to decide when best to trigger like an upsell opportunity or a shift from like a monthly plan to an annual plan to drive LTV. So there's lots of really interesting levers you can pull in our retention tooling as well. And we've got some really good case studies that have sort of helped companies increase their retention rates by 20-25%.
What do you think is the coolest thing about the what are you most excited about the Paddle platform?
Oh, that is a good question. I think what I'm most excited about is the fact that there are I've listed off and spoken about a lot of levers for growth, but I think what I'm most excited about, which we're working on right now, is how we can more intelligently and more automatically help customers grow their businesses through data-driven insights and recommendations. So by being able to use our enormous data set, right, of payments and revenue data to make really smart recommendations to our customers that can help them grow. I'm not one for AI washing, but I think that the technology that's now available to us and to many companies to really do amazing things with data and intelligently help our customers grow is super exciting. So I think it's like building on top of what we consider to be a foundation and really supporting the growth of our customers in the future.
Got it. So it's like, the 3,000 plus Paddle customers, because of all the data that you have, in terms of buyer behavior, you can make recommendations to your customers through your platform itself. Like, hey, you should offer a 20% discount code to your customers because this subset of your customers will absolutely convert at a annual pricing plan. Right now they're on a monthly pricing plan, but if you give them an annual pricing plan with a 20% discount, you'll convert at a much higher rate, for example.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Well, or by going, listen, like at that price point, your checkout conversion is too low, which indicates to us that your price is too high. Try dropping your price by $1 or $1.50, and we expect your checkout conversion to go up by 15%, netting out a positive revenue upside of like $10,000 a month or something. Like being able to just automate the delivery of those recommendations to our customers, or like willingness to pay and purchasing power is shifted in Southeast Asia. We recommend that, in Vietnam or Thailand or wherever, like you adjust your pricing by X%, or you can click this button and we'll do it all for you. Right. I think that's very much like the way we're thinking about the future and about really helping our customers grow.
Very cool. So, I mean, you guys work with like 3,000 customers, right? So what are some trends that you see in the space with respect to, various founders that you can speak to? And when I say trends, like what are you seeing that works? What are you seeing that doesn't work?
Yeah.
Either one would be great.
Yeah, I think the one that jumps to mind is usage-based pricing is a really interesting trend. So I think with AI companies, we've seen a big shift towards like charging based on, or billing your customers based on value and based on what you've consumed in the product. So I guess it's like this shift away from like the good, better, best plan model where you have like the starter, the pro, and the premium, right? Sort of pricing and billing mechanisms that are much more closely tied to the value that you're receiving from the product. So pricing based on consumption is what we call it, or metered billing, or consumption-based billing, or usage-based billing. This is a really interesting trend, I think, at the moment. I think especially, it's been around for a while, right? Like things like AWS have always sold on that. Like you buy credits and then you based on the consumption of the credits is how you build. But I think more and more companies are shifting to sort of that real usage-based, value-based pricing. which is interesting. I think it works for some. I don't think it works for every company. One of the drawbacks of usage-based pricing is that it's less predictable. So if you're budgeting, like if you're a CFO or if you're managing a budget and you're buying lots of products that are all usage-based, you can't sort of easily predict exactly how much you're going to spend with vendor X or vendor Y. So I think it's something that you have to be a little bit careful and clever with. And we've seen sort of companies deploy like hybrid monetization techniques. I think that's another trend, which is like really thinking about building in different pricing models into one core offering. So, good, better, best, 20 bucks, $50 custom sort of model of going like, actually, you know what, you can get, you pay $10 a month for access to the platform. And then you might buy credits for additional pieces.
Yeah, like DocuSign like smashes me with this model because I'm like sending out, I have my typical plan, and then their pricing was like fascinating. I have, my annual subscription, and then I hit the number of envelopes on my annual subscription, and they were like, well, if you move to, it was monthly, and then they bumped me up to annual to give me like 40 more envelopes. And then I ran out of those 4 envelopes. And then they were like, well, you could buy a minimum of 100 envelopes.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the really interesting things about this is not making it too complex. I think one of the big drawbacks or trade-offs of going too deeply into like a complex hybrid monetization model is that it can turn consumers off when they're staring at your pricing page going, oh, I just don't get it. This is too much for me, right? So it's about that balance, right? Getting that balance right between simplicity and like consumability of your pricing model with something that's going to maximize monetization for you as a company is really interesting.
Totally. I mean, it was also annoying in that experience too, because when I bought the monthly plan, I didn't think about what would happen when I ran out of those envelopes, and then I didn't really have options when I ran out of the envelopes. I was forced to go through DocuSign's like pricing model and follow the pricing model, but then I was annoyed. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to keep bumping up against this, and now I'm like kind of getting extorted.
Yeah, absolutely. Really interesting.
Does the paddle platform have any functionality? Because I think, this concept of pricing model and intuitive pricing model is like so important for SaaS companies. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned this like new feature functionality that might improve like conversions, for example, based on pricing models, but will it address this specifically? Like, will it say like, okay, hey, SaaS company, if people use your product up until this point, then you can charge them this, and then you should think about charging them like this at that point. So it will do those things too?
I mean, I'd love to see that. I think it will at some point. It doesn't yet, but that's definitely the vision, right? To have that level of sort of sophistication built into the product. Like the platform itself is very flexible. So you can deploy most pricing models using Paddle just by using our APIs, right? And it's not super complex to do. We have great developer documentation that helps developers through like deploying different pricing models. And like the way we work with our customers is very much as growth advisors. Like we want to help them get the most out of their business and get the most out of Paddle and help them grow. And so we'll often advise on that, right? I think productizing that sort of channel of advice is going to be interesting. But like we definitely work with our customers on like based on your product, like how should you be thinking about pricing? How should you be thinking about building out your different packaging for your product and what sort of model should you be deploying? So yeah, it's definitely something that we do a lot of for sure.
Who should SaaS founders talk to on the Paddle team about getting access to these, various benefits? Is it just their customer account manager? Like
yeah, through the CSM team and customer success team who support our customers. We run lots of webinars as well. So we do like one-to-one stuff and also one-to-many stuff. One of our core sort of principles at Paddle is to be the most helpful brand in SaaS. It's been that for the last few years, and it's something we really believe in. So we want to give as much to the SaaS industry as we can. We do that through content. We do that through webinars in the one-to-many sense. We publish things like the SaaS Index, which sort of aggregates data, but we also do it on a one-to-one basis as well with customers through our customer success team to make sure that they're getting the most out of Paddle and setting up their business for success.
Got it. I've like one or two more questions for you. I kind of already asked this one, but yeah, predictions for 2025 for the market, for the SaaS market. I'm just curious.
I think SaaS in 2025 is going to have a good year. I'm bullish on 2025. I think it's going to be better than 2024. I think we're going to see a really big evolution in pricing models. I think we're going to start to see companies deploy pricing models that we haven't seen before. I think this typically comes in like the sort of innovation plateau and then it kicks up again. I think we've been in a world where SaaS is relatively mature and the way you price SaaS has sort of been more or less the same for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. I think it wouldn't surprise me if this year in 2025 we see like the next evolution of sort of pricing for SaaS and software. I think AI is going to drive a lot of that. I think like agentic AI, like agent-driven AI and agents performing tasks and how do they bill and charge for those things. I had a great conversation with a guy yesterday about that. I think that's going to be interesting. So yeah, I think good year for SaaS, and I think we're going to see a really interesting evolution in pricing models this year.
And then as VP of product, what can people expect from Paddle in 2025 that maybe they didn't get in 2024, before that?
Sure. Lots of new payment methods. This is going to be a big year for us from a payment method offering perspective. We have quite a few payment methods that we built over the last 9 or 10 years of Paddle's existence. I think we're going to double it in 1 year is my prediction. So sort of increase that number of payment methods by a lot, which I'm really excited about. I think that's been something that has been asked for a long time from our customers. So really leveling up on localization and payment methods is super exciting. I think that's probably something that a lot of our customers will really like to hear. And then I think the growth recommendations. So using data and insights to generate growth opportunities for our customers. I think we're working on a lot of that now. I think you'll start to see that. Well, I know you will start to see that come into the product over the course of the year. It will start small. You'll start to see small interventions and it will grow into something more sophisticated. But I think that's going to be really exciting as well. I'd say those are the two things that I'm most pumped about. More localization, more payment methods, expanding our global offering, and then also really getting into how can we help our customers grow in really unique and interesting ways.
Awesome, man. This has been a really insightful and valuable conversation. I've definitely learned a lot. I had no idea that, that a payment provider could be like so robust in the ways that they, work with their customers to just increase growth and, really be a supporter of growth in that way. And I very much see it. So I really appreciate your time and for jumping on the show with me. Is there like any last kind of message you want to leave SaaS founders with, or anything you feel that they should know that maybe we didn't cover so far?
No, I think it's all good. Thanks very much for having me on the show. It's been great. I think the only thing I would leave with is like, as I mentioned before, we want to be the most helpful brand in SaaS. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn or X or wherever, or contact anyone from Paddle. We embrace the SaaS industry with open arms and we really want to help and learn from you as well. So yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Lucas, thanks so much. For everyone out there, his contact information will be in the show notes below. As usual, if you've ever seen the show, it's how it goes. But and make sure to reach out to him. And if you're watching, please make sure to subscribe, like, comment. Let me know who else you want to see on the show, or if there are any topics that you'd like for us to cover. And as always, see you next week.